Your groceries just became a war casualty. Your cooking gas cylinder is harder to find. Induction cookers are out of stock. And when you walk into your favorite restaurant for lunch, all they can serve you is just dal rice. You didn't choose any of this. You don't live near a war zone, and you may not even follow the news closely. But here is the truth of the world we live in today. A war today is no longer fought only between two armies on a battlefield. It is a supply chain event, a shipping lane crisis, a banking confidence shock, an insurance shock, and all thanks to decades of globalization. It lands in your shopping cart whether you like it or not. In today's episode of Logistically Speaking, we map exactly how conflicts around Iran and Iraq is reshaping economies, shifting financial capitals, choking trade routes, and hitting the daily lives of people from Mumbai to Munich. Watch this space for upcoming episode where we will dive deeper into the impact on the Indian and global economy, explore how it is shaping multiple sectors, and we will also examine whether global trade in the future could gradually shift even partially from the dominance of US dollar to maybe Chinese yuan. Every day, 21 million barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz, a strip of water just 33 kilometers wide between Iran and Oman. And that is 1/5 of the world's entire petroleum trade, which is a corridor you could almost swim across. From the day it closed, global oil prices began rising, and within 48 hours, the impact was felt across the world. Insurance premium for tankers and cargo vessels surged. Refineries in Japan, India, and Europe scrambled to secure supplies, and jet fuel started becoming scarce. The ripple effects spread quickly through the global economy and pushing up the cost of everything from tomatoes to tires. We have already seen a recent example in the Red Sea, where disruption severely impacted global trade and continuing to worry markets. Houthi attacks forced hundreds of container ships to reroute around Cape of Good Hope, adding 10 to 14 extra days to every voyage. The detour meant higher fuel consumption, increased crew costs, and sharply rising freight rates. Those additional costs did not vanish. They ultimately showed up in the price of everyday goods on shelves across India and Europe. Now, the escalating Gulf conflicts threaten to add even more fuel to an already burning fire in global trade. The WTO estimates even a 10% sustained rise in shipping costs cuts globally trade growth by measurable fractions, disproportionately hurting emerging economies with a thin foreign exchange reserves and import-dependent populations. That means countries like India, Bangladesh, Egypt, and Kenya absorb the worst of a war they did not start. India imports roughly 85% of its crude. When Gulf disruption hits, even the threat of it, LPG availability tightens, especially in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Prices rise, and this might even force some households to start making hard choices between cooking gas and school fees. And petrol hikes raise trucking costs. Trucking costs raise vegetable prices at the mandi. And suddenly, a missile strike 3,000 kilometers away shows up at the neighborhood Kirana store. Europe already lived through one brutal energy shock, the Russian gas crisis of 2022. It spent 2 years diversifying, and now it faces a second chapter. LNG tankers from Qatar passes through instability zones, making them risk assets. And beyond energy, Iraq and Iran are the major fertilizer and petrochemical suppliers. Fertilizer shortages cut farm yields, and lower yields raise food prices. Ordinary households in Milan and Manchester feel it just as surely as it is in Mumbai. Every supply shock triggers the same pattern. People do panic buy. Cooking oil, rice, flour vanish from the shelves. This is individually rational and collectively catastrophic. Hoarding accelerates scarcity and fuel public fear. And social media amplifies panic faster than supply chains can respond. And governments caught between subsidizing prices and protecting deficit end up satisfying no one. Dubai has been the Middle East's crown jewel, neutral, stable, and a city where global money felt safe. But Proximity is a liability in crisis. If conflict deepens, expect a quiet capital migration towards Singapore, which sits far from Gulf volatility and is already a dominant banking and commodities hub. But in the midst of this, there is a wild card, Saudi Arabia. Riyadh is aggressively positioning itself as a financial center with a new regulatory framework, multinational regional headquarters, and the Diriyah Gate project. If Dubai absorbs geopolitical risk, Saudi may paradoxically emerge as a steadier Gulf bet. And Shanghai watches all of this very closely. Here is a central paradox of our age. The same globalization that gave a farmer in Punjab access to Israeli drip irrigation technology, that gave a factory worker in Surat a job making clothes for a Swedish consumer, and that connected a fintech startup in Bangalore to venture capital in San Francisco. That very web of independence means a strike on oil facility in 𝐒𝐻 province raises the price of auto rickshaw fuel in Chennai. War is no longer an event that happens to someone else somewhere else. It is a systematic shock. It reprices energy, it reroutes shipping, it shakes banking confidence, and it triggers hoarding. And it reduces the living standard of people who are never picked a weapon and never will. The question for policymakers and for all of us is no longer simply how do we stop this war. The deeper question is how do we build supply chain, energy systems, and financial network resilient enough to absorb the next crisis. Because history tells us there will always be next one. Nothing accelerates infrastructure investment like fear. India's push for the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor or IMEC is one such example, an effort to build an alternative route spine that bypasses vulnerable maritime choke points linking Indian ports through Gulf Rail network to Israeli and European terminals. These are long-term bets, but wars have a way of accelerating timeline that peace often slows down. In this new reality, diversified energy sources, strategic food reserves, alternative trade corridors, and greater regional self-sufficiency are no longer soft policy preferences. They have become hard national security requirements for every country on every continent. We are not bystanders to the world. We are participants in this supply chain. And when the chain breaks, we will all feel it. If this episode of Logistically Speaking changed how you read the news, share this video with someone who thinks war are someone else's problem. Thank you for watching till the end. See you next week.